silence in the room was heavier than the crystal chandelier hanging above it. In the world of high finance, a dropped pin could crash a stock, but in the sapphire room, a dropped fork could end a career. Everyone stopped breathing. The man sitting at table 1 didn't yell. He didn't scream. He simply stared at the stain on his cuff with a cold, reptilian detachment that terrified grown men. They called him the Wall Street Reaper, a billionaire who dissolved companies for sport. He thought he owned the room. He thought he owned the people in it. He was about to find out that the woman refilling his water glass had nothing left to lose, and she was the only one in the room not afraid to burn it all down. The air inside the sapphire room at the Grand Cosmopolitan Hotel always smelled of money. It was a specific scent, a blend of aged mahogany, fresh orchids, and the crisp, distinct aroma of fare. Maya Brooks adjusted the collar of her uniform, her fingers trembling slightly, not from nerves, but from exhaustion. It was her 14th hour on her feet. Her rent was due in 3 days. Her mother's medical bills were sitting in a menacing stack on her kitchen counter, and her shoes were slowly eating into her heels. Table 1 was occupied. That was the only thing the staff had whispered about since shift change at 4:00 p.m. Sebastian Holt was in the building. Holt wasn't just a billionaire, he was an economic weather system. At 34, he was the majority shareholder of Holt Vanguard, a conglomerate that swallowed tech startups and real estate portfolios with predatory efficiency. He was handsome in a way that felt like a weapon, sharp jawline, eyes the color of cold steel, and tailored suits that cost more than Maya's entire life's earnings. But his temper was legendary. There were rumors he had once fired a board member for clicking a pen too loudly during a merger. Tonight, he was dining with 3 men in grey suits, executives from a rival firm he was likely gutting. Maya watched from the service station as Gerard, the floor manager, practically hyperventilated while polishing a wine glass. "Maya," Gerard hissed, his face pale. "Table 1, water, sparkling, no ice. Do not look him in the eye. Do not speak unless spoken to. If you spill a drop, don't bother coming back to the kitchen. Just keep walking out the front door." "I got it, Gerard," Maya said, her voice raspy. She grabbed the crystal pitcher. She was too tired to be afraid. Fear required energy. Maya was running on caffeine fumes and sheer desperation. She approached the table. The atmosphere around Sebastian Holt was a vacuum. The other 3 men were sweating, their ties loosened, pitching him numbers that sounded like telephone codes. Holt was silent, scrolling through something on a tablet, ignoring them completely. Maya stepped into the periphery. "More water, sir?" Holt didn't look up. He merely lifted a finger. Maya poured. She was steady. She was professional. But as she pulled the pitcher back, one of the nervous executives gestured wildly with his hand to emphasize a point about Q3 projections. His knuckles clipped Maya's elbow. It happened in slow motion. The heavy crystal pitcher tilted. A splash of water, no more than a few ounces, escaped the spout. It didn't hit the table. It didn't hit the floor. It landed directly on the sleeve of Sebastian Holt's charcoal Brioni suit. The silence that followed was absolute. The background music seemed to cut out. The 3 executives froze, their mouths hanging open. Gerard, watching from the shadows, looked like he was about to faint. Sebastian Holt slowly lowered his tablet. He looked at the wet spot on his cuff. Then he turned his head. His eyes locked onto Maya's. They were terrifying, void of empathy, filled with a bored, lethal annoyance. "You," Holt said. His voice was low, a baritone rumble that vibrated through the floor. "Do you have any idea what this fabric is?" "I apologize, sir," Maya said, grabbing a linen napkin. "Let me—" "Don't touch me," he snapped, recoiling as if she were infectious. He stood up, towering over her. The restaurant went deadly quiet. You people are incompetent. It's a pitcher of water. It's a simple task. A trained monkey could do it. Yet here you are, failing. It was an accident, sir. The gentleman bumped. I don't care about the gentleman, Holt cut her off. I care that my evening is ruined because the hotel hires clumsy, low-intelligence staff who can't perform basic motor functions. He grabbed his napkin and threw it onto the table. It knocked over a glass of red wine, which shattered, sending crimson liquid splashing across the white tablecloth and onto Maya's apron. "Clean it up," Holt commanded, pointing at the floor. "On your knees. Pick up the glass." Maya stared at him. The humiliation burned hot in her chest, waking her up from her fatigue. "I said." Holt stepped closer, invading her personal space. "Get on your knees and clean up the mess you caused." Something inside Maya snapped her. It was the sound of a cable holding up a suspension bridge, finally giving way. The medical bills, the double shifts, the rude customers, the aching feet, it all coalesced into a single, hard diamond of rage. Maya looked at the broken glass. Then she looked at Sebastian Holt. "No," she said. The word rang out like a gunshot. Holt blinked. It was likely the first time in a decade someone had said that word to him. "Excuse me?" "I said no," Maya said, her voice gaining volume. She set the water pitcher down on the table with a heavy thud. "I didn't drop the wine. You did. You threw a tantrum like a toddler because your suit got wet. Water dries, Mr. Holt, but your personality? That seems to be permanently stained." The executives gasped. Gerard was sprinting toward the table now, waving his hands. "Maya, stop!" Gerard squeaked. "Mr. Holt, please, she's fired. She's gone immediately." "I'm not fired," Maya said, turning to her manager, her eyes blazing. "I quit. I am not cleaning up after a grown man who treats people like furniture. I make $12 an hour, Gerard. That isn't enough to sell my dignity to a guy who thinks his bank account gives him the right to abuse people." She turned back to Holt. He was staring at her, but the look of boredom was gone. He looked stunned. "You think everyone is afraid of you," Maya said, stepping closer to him, matching his intensity. "But we're not afraid. We're just exhausted. And tonight, I'm done." Maya reached into her apron, pulled out her name tag, and dropped it into his half-full soup bowl. Splatters of bisque hit his tie. "Enjoy your dinner," she said. She turned on her heel and walked out of the sapphire room. The silence she left behind was deafening. Maya didn't stop walking until she hit the cold night air of Fifth Avenue. Her hands were shaking violently now. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by the crushing reality of what she had just done. She had just quit her primary source of income. She had insulted one of the most powerful men in New York. "Stupid," she whispered to herself, leaning against the brick wall of the staff exit. "Stupid, stupid, stupid." She checked her phone. A text from the billing department of St. Jude's Hospital. "Payment overdue. Please contact us to avoid collections." Tears pricked her eyes. Dignity didn't pay for dialysis. Pride didn't keep the lights on. She wiped her face aggressively with her sleeve. She needed a plan. She needed a new job by tomorrow morning. Suddenly, the heavy steel door of the service entrance banged open. Gerard came stumbling out, looking disheveled. "You!" he shouted, pointing a finger at her. "Are you insane? Do you know who that was? He's threatening to buy the building just to fire me. He wants the owner's number." "I quit, Gerard. I'm not your problem anymore," Maya said, pushing off the wall. "You're right." A deep voice cut through the alleyway shadows. "You're not his problem. You're mine." Gerard froze. Maya stiffened. Sebastian Holt stepped out of the service entrance. He wasn't wearing his jacket anymore. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing forearms that looked surprisingly strong for a man who pushed paper. He looked out of place in the dirty alleyway, like a panther standing in a landfill. "Mr. Holt," Gerard stammered, "I assure you." "Leave us," Holt said. He didn't look at the manager. He kept his eyes locked on Maya. Gerard didn't hesitate. He scrambled back inside, the door clicking shut, leaving Maya alone with the billionaire. Maya clutched her purse strap. "If you're here to yell at me more, save your breath. I don't work for you. I don't work for the hotel. You have no power here." Holt took a step forward. Under the harsh orange street lamp, he looked less like a monster and more like a puzzle she couldn't solve. He wasn't angry. He was studying her, analyzing her like a balance sheet that didn't add up. "You have a sharp tongue, Miss Brooks," he said. He knew her name. How did he know her name? "Most people cry when I raise my voice. Some beg. You attacked. You deserved it," she shot back. "Perhaps," he conceded, shocking her. He pulled a silver cigarette case from his pocket, but didn't open it. He just turned it over in his fingers. "I have a problem, Maya. And strangely enough, your outburst in there might have just provided the solution. I'm not interested in your problems." Maya turned to walk away. "I'll pay you $10,000, he said. Maya stopped. Her shoes felt glued to the pavement. $10,000. That was 3 months of rent. That was a chunk of the medical debt. She slowly turned back around. "For what?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. "To clean your suit?" "To pretend to be my fiancé," Holt said calmly. Maya laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "You're crazy. You're actually insane. I am currently in the middle of acquiring a family-owned shipping logistics firm in Greece," Holt explained, his voice business-like, as if discussing the weather. "The matriarch of the family, Helena Costas, is old-fashioned. She refuses to sell her company to a man she considers unstable and without family values. She thinks I'm a soulless shark." "She's right," Maya muttered. "She is," Holt agreed. "But I need her company. The deal is worth $400 million to my firm. I have a meeting with her in 3 days in the Hamptons. I need a fiancé. Someone who looks grounded. Someone who looks like she can tame me. Someone who isn't one of the plastic socialites I usually date." He looked her up and down. "You stood up to me. You have fire. If you can handle me in a restaurant, you can handle me in front of a Greek grandmother." "You want me to lie?" Maya said. "I want you to act. It's a transaction. 1 weekend, $10,000. Cash." Maya looked at his face. It was a mask of indifference, but she saw something else in his eyes. Desperation? No. Sebastian Holt didn't get desperate. Determination. $20,000, Maya said. Holt's eyebrows shot up. A small, almost imperceptible smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Negotiating? You have leverage, I suppose. 15,000. 20, Maya insisted. "And you apologize." "Excuse me?" "For the soup. For the low intelligence comment. You apologize to me right now, or I walk, and you can explain to the Greek grandmother why you're alone." The air in the alley crackled. Holt stared at her, his jaw tightening. He was a man who had never apologized in his life. He looked at the dumpster, then back at Maya's defiant face. "I apologize," he said stiffly. "It was uncalled for." Maya let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. 20,000, half up front. Holt reached into his back pocket and pulled out a checkbook. "Done. Be at the tarmac at Teterboro Airport tomorrow at 8 a.m. Don't be late. And Miss Brooks?" "What?" "Bring the attitude. You're going to need it." The morning sun at Teterboro Airport was blinding, reflecting off the chrome fuselage of a Gulfstream G650 that looked less like a vehicle and more like a missile designed to pierce the stratosphere. Maya stood on the tarmac, clutching a small, battered duffel bag that contained her entire weekend wardrobe. She felt ridiculous. She was wearing jeans and a sweater she'd bought at a thrift store, standing next to a machine worth $60 million. A black SUV pulled up, and Sebastian Holt emerged. He looked fresh, rested, and terrifyingly perfect in a navy blazer and white chinos. He didn't say hello. He simply gestured to the stairs of the jet. "You're 3 minutes early," he noted as she climbed aboard. "I appreciate punctuality." "I just wanted to get this over with," Maya muttered, stepping into the cabin. Inside, the luxury was nauseating. Cream leather seats, walnut trim, and a flight attendant named Chloe, who looked like she had been genetically engineered to smile. As soon as the plane leveled off, Sebastian dropped a thick leather binder onto Maya's lap. "The script," he said, taking the seat opposite her and opening a laptop. "Study it. You have 40 minutes before we land in East Hampton." Maya opened the binder. It was a dossier. It contained a fabricated life history for Maya Brooks. "I'm an art history consultant," Maya read aloud, raising an eyebrow. "And we met at a gallery opening in Soho, where I was critiquing a neo-expressionist piece you were buying." "It's plausible," Sebastian said, without looking up. "It explains why you don't work a corporate job, why you're well-spoken, and why you're poor. Art consultants rarely make money unless they are famous. And my family? Deceased, tragically, keeps the questions to a minimum. Helena Costas values family above all else. If you have none, you become a sympathetic figure rather than a vetted threat." Maya felt a cold chill. "You're erasing my real life." "Your real life involves serving soup to ungrateful men and dodging debt collectors," Sebastian said, his voice devoid of emotion. "For the next 48 hours, that life doesn't exist. You are Maya, the sophisticated, supportive fiancé who sees the gentle soul beneath my corporate exterior." "That's going to be the hardest lie to tell," she quipped. "The gentle soul part." Sebastian stopped typing. He looked at her, his grey eyes assessing her. "Do not underestimate Helena Costas. She is 72 years old. She built a shipping empire from a single fishing boat, and she can smell a lie like a shark smells blood. If she senses you are fake, the deal dies. If the deal dies, you don't get the second half of your money." "I'll do my job," Maya said, closing the binder. "But I have a condition. You are in no position to make demands." "I need a dress," she said calmly. "If I'm an art consultant dating a billionaire, I can't walk into a Hamptons estate wearing Old Navy. You hired the actress, Sebastian. You need to pay for the costume." Sebastian stared at her for a long beat. Then he pressed the intercom button. "Tell the pilot to radio ahead. We need the stylist at the house in 1 hour." The house, if one could call a 20-bedroom limestone structure a house, sat on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. It was called Windward Estate. As the car pulled up the long gravel driveway, Maya saw the fleet of luxury cars parked out front. This wasn't just a meeting. It was a gathering. "You didn't say there would be other people," Maya whispered, panic flaring in her chest. "Helena likes an audience," Sebastian muttered, adjusting his cuffs. "Just stay close to me, smile, and for God's sake, don't order the house wine." They stepped out of the car. The ocean breeze was sharp and salty. Waiting at the top of the stone stairs was a woman who looked like she was carved from marble. Helena Costas was short, stout, and wore all black. Her silver hair was pulled back into a severe bun, and her dark eyes were scanning them before they even reached the top step. Standing next to her was a man Maya recognized instantly from the business magazines left behind at the hotel. Bennett Sharp. Sebastian stiffened beside her. "Bennett is here," he whispered, a dangerous edge in his voice. "He's my competitor. He's trying to steal the deal." "Great," Maya whispered back. "So not only do I have to impress Grandma, I have to dodge the villain? Just follow my lead." They reached the top. Sebastian put on a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Helena, you look magnificent as always." "Flattery is cheap, Sebastian," Helena said. Her voice was thick with a Greek accent, raspy from years of smoking. She didn't smile. She turned her gaze to Maya. It felt like being scanned by an X-ray machine. "And this is the woman who finally caught the wolf?" "This is Maya," Sebastian said, placing a protective hand on the small of Maya's back. The touch was electric, startlingly warm. "My fiancé." Maya extended her hand. "Mrs. Costas, it is an honor to meet you. Sebastian speaks of you with such reverence." Helena took her hand. Her grip was iron. "Reverence? He usually speaks of people as if they are assets to be liquidated. You are very pretty, my dear. But pretty fades. Are you smart?" "I like to think I'm observant," Maya said, holding the old woman's gaze. "Which is often more useful than being book-smart." Helena's lips twitched. A micro-smile. "Good answer. Come inside. Lunch is served. Bennett was just telling me why your fiancé is going to run my company into the ground. Perhaps you can defend him." Bennett Sharp stepped forward. He was handsome in a slick, oily way, with perfectly coiffed blonde hair and a smile that showed too many teeth. "Miss Brooks," Bennett said, kissing her hand. "I wasn't aware Sebastian was capable of long-term attachments. How long have you been together?" Maya felt Sebastian tense up. The dossier said 6 months. "Long enough to know that rumors about his temper are exaggerated," Maya lied smoothly, pulling her hand away. "And long enough to know that he values loyalty over quick profits, unlike some, I assume." Bennett's smile faltered. Helena let out a dry chuckle. "She bites," Helena said, turning to walk inside. "I like her. Let's eat." The dining room at Windward Estate was a cavernous hall with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the crashing waves. The table was set for 12, though only 4 of them were seated. The service staff moved like ghosts, silent and efficient. Maya sat to Sebastian's right. She felt the familiar weight of the atmosphere, the clinking of silver, the hushed tension. It was the Sapphire Room all over again, but this time she was on the receiving end of the service. She watched the servers carefully. She noticed the young man pouring the wine was shaking. She noticed the salad forks were placed slightly too far to the left. She noticed the way the head of staff watched Helena's water glass, like a hawk. "I know your life," she thought, looking at the server. "I am you." "So, Maya," Bennett Sharp said, slicing into his squab. "Sebastian tells us you are in the art world. A consultant?" "That's right," Maya said, taking a sip of water. "Which period do you specialize in?" Bennett asked. He was probing. He suspected something. Sebastian opened his mouth to answer, but Maya beat him to it. "I've been focusing recently on the post-war abstract expressionists, though frankly, the market is becoming so saturated with derivative works that I find myself drawn back to the chaotic realism of the early 20th century." It was a line she had heard a gallery owner say at table 4 a week ago. She had memorized it because it sounded fancy. Bennett paused. "Interesting. I assume you studied at Columbia, or perhaps Yale." "I studied life," Maya said, dodging the trap. The dossier said NYU, But if Bennett checked alumni records, she'd be dead. I took a sabbatical from formal education to travel. Art isn't learned in a classroom, Mr. Sharp. It's felt. Spoken like a true romantic, Helena interrupted, watching Maya closely over her wine glass. Sebastian is a machine. He is numbers and graphs. How do you tolerate him? This was the test. Helena didn't care about art. She cared about the relationship. Maya looked at Sebastian. He was watching her, his face tight. He expected her to say something cliché about his heart. I don't just tolerate him, Maya said, lowering her voice, making it sound intimate. I challenge him. You see him as a machine because that is the armor he wears for business. But machines don't have passion. And Sebastian performs everything he does with an intensity that is terrifying. He doesn't just want to win, Helena. He wants to build. He's looking for a legacy. I think he sees your company not as a line item, but as history, and he wants to protect that. Silence descended on the table. Sebastian looked at her, genuinely surprised. The lie was good. It was almost too good. Helena set her glass down. He wants to protect it, or strip it for parts? If he wanted to strip it, Maya said, he wouldn't be here enduring this interrogation. He'd be in New York launching a hostile takeover. He's here because he wants your blessing. Helena leaned back. You argue better than he does. I have to, Maya smiled. He's very stubborn. Bennett Sharp cleared his throat, sensing he was losing ground. A lovely sentiment. But business is about solvency, not sentiment. Sebastian's firm is over-leveraged. If he buys you, Helena, he'll have to cut costs. That means firing your workers, the people who built your boats. Maya saw Sebastian's jaw clench. He was about to explode. The temper was rising. If he snapped now, he lost. Maya reached under the table and placed her hand firmly on Sebastian's knee. It was a warning. Stay down. She turned to Bennett. Speaking of workers, Mr. Sharp, she said, her voice turning icy. I couldn't help but notice your firm recently acquired the logistics chain in Savannah. 2 weeks later, the pension fund for the dock workers was dissolved. Legal? Yes. Ethical? Hardly. If we are comparing moral compasses, I suggest you put yours away before it points south. Bennett turned red. That was a necessary restructuring. It was theft, Maya said simply. She turned to the server, a young boy trembling with a tray of bread. Could I have a piece of sourdough, please? She smiled at the boy, a genuine, warm smile. And you're doing a wonderful job, by the way. The service is impeccable. The boy flushed with pride and nodded. Helena Costas saw the interaction. She saw how Maya treated the staff. She saw how she handled Bennett. Sebastian, Helena said. She has manners. You usually bring women who treat the staff like furniture. This one, she sees them. She keeps me grounded, Sebastian managed to say, his voice rough. We will see, Helena said. Dinner is over. Sebastian, join me in the library. Bennett, you too. Maya, you are free to explore the grounds. Do not go near the cliffs in the dark. As the men stood up, Sebastian leaned close to Maya's ear. That was... He hesitated. Impressive. You owe me another 10,000, she whispered back. We'll see if I survive the library first. Maya wandered the estate for an hour, her nerves fraying. She had survived the first round, but the adrenaline crash was hitting her hard. She found herself in a sprawling garden, the moonlight illuminating manicured hedges and stone statues. She sat on a bench, taking off her high heels. You are not who you say you are. Maya froze. She spun around. It wasn't Bennett. It wasn't Helena. It was Oliver. Sebastian's personal driver and bodyguard, a man who had been a silent shadow until now. He was standing by a rose bush, smoking a cigarette. "Excuse me," Maya said, heart hammering. "I've driven Mr. Holt for 5 years," Oliver said, walking closer. "I know the type of women he dates. They smell like expensive perfume and boredom. You smell like soap and hard work. And you looked at that waiter like a colleague, not a servant." Maya stood up, clutching her shoes as a weapon. "Are you going to tell him?" Oliver chuckled. "Tell him what? That he accidentally hired a human being for once?" "No." He took a drag of his cigarette. "But Bennett Sharp isn't stupid. He has a private investigator on retainer. He was texting under the table during dinner. If you're lying about who you are, Miss Brooks, he'll know by breakfast." Maya felt the blood drain from her face. "He's checking me. He's checking everything. If you have a skeleton in your closet, Bennett will find it and bring it to the breakfast table tomorrow." Maya thought of the medical bills, the eviction notices from 2 years ago, the fact that Maya Brooks, art consultant, didn't exist in any database. "What do I do?" she asked, surprisingly trusting the bodyguard. "You get ahead of it," Oliver said, dropping the cigarette and crushing it under his boot. "Or you run. But if you run, Holt loses the deal. And I think, despite everything, you don't want him to lose." Maya looked back at the house, where the lights of the library were glowing. She didn't like Sebastian Holt. He was arrogant, rude, and entitled. But tonight, when she touched his knee, she felt him shaking. He was afraid of failing. "I'm not running," Maya said. "Then you better prepare for a war," Oliver said, "because tomorrow is the sailing regatta. And accidents happen on the water." Maya put her shoes back on. The game had changed. It wasn't just about pretending anymore. It was about survival. She walked back toward the house, determined. She had to find Sebastian. She had to warn him that his cover story was about to be blown apart. But as she reached the top of the stairs, she heard voices coming from the balcony above. "It's almost done, Helena," Sebastian's voice. It sounded different, cold, predatory. "I'll sign the papers tomorrow, and once the company is mine, I'll dismantle the fleet. The liquidity is all I need for the Asian merger. The Costas legacy ends on Monday." Maya froze in the shadows. He had lied. He wasn't saving the company. He had told Maya he wanted to protect Helena's legacy, and she had sold that lie to the old woman with conviction. But Sebastian was exactly what Bennett said he was. A butcher. Maya felt a wave of nausea. She was helping him destroy the woman who had just complimented her integrity. She backed away into the darkness, her mind racing. She could leave. She could take her money and run. Or she could make Sebastian Holt regret the day he ever met a waitress from the Sapphire Room. The blizzard had transformed the mountain pass into a white void. Visibility was 0. Edward, a man trained to endure the harshest conditions on Earth, felt his strength failing. Every step was a battle against a wind that screamed like a living thing, threatening to tear the warmth right out of his blood. But the German shepherd didn't stop. The dog, a stray that had simply appeared at his cabin door 2 days ago, plowed through the waist-deep drifts with the determination of a machine. He would run ahead, vanish into the whiteout, and then bark, a sharp, commanding sound that cut through the gale. "Come! Keep moving!" "I'm coming, buddy!" Edward gasped, his voice lost in the wind. His legs burned with lactic acid. He checked his GPS watch. Dead. The cold had drained the battery. He was navigating solely on trust now, trust in an animal he barely knew. The dog stopped abruptly near the jagged spine of a fallen ridge. He didn't bark this time. He started digging. Edward's heart hammered against his ribs, louder than the storm. He surged forward, adrenaline overriding his exhaustion. He dropped to his knees beside the dog, tearing at the snow with his gloved hands. The dog whined, a high-pitched, desperate sound that chilled Edward more than the ice. "What is it? What did you find?" His hand brushed against something synthetic, not rock, not wood, fabric, blue nylon. Edward stopped breathing. He recognized that color. It was the winter coat he had bought for his 6-year-old daughter, Leora, just last week. "Leora!" he screamed, his voice cracking. He dug frantically, throwing snow aside until he revealed a small, curled shape. She was tucked into the hollow of the tree roots, buried under a foot of fresh powder. She wasn't moving. Edward pulled her from the snow, cradling her small body against his chest. She was terrifyingly cold. Her lips were blue, her skin pale as the snow around them. "No, no, no. Stay with me, Lil. Stay with me." He ripped off his gloves with his teeth and pressed his fingers to her neck. For a second, he felt nothing but the numbing cold. Then, a pulse. Faint, thready, and slow. But there, she was alive. "She's alive," he choked out, looking at the dog. The German Shepherd wasn't barking anymore. He was sitting close, watching them with intelligent amber eyes. Edward noticed something then. The snow around the tree hollow wasn't just piled up. It was packed down, and there was fur caught in the bark. The dog hadn't just found her. He had been here before. He had stayed with her. "You kept her warm," Edward realized, the magnitude of it hitting him like a physical blow. "You stayed until you knew you had to come get me." There was no time to dwell on the miracle. Hypothermia was setting in. Edward unzipped his heavy tactical parka and pulled Leora inside, pressing her frozen body against his core. He wrapped the outer shell around both of them. "We have to move," he told the dog. "We need shelter. Now." The dog seemed to understand. He didn't run ahead this time. He stayed at Edward's knee, pressing his body against Edward's leg, offering his own heat and stability. They moved as one unit. Edward carried his world in his arms, and the dog broke the path. 10 minutes later, the silhouette of an old mining shack emerged from the gloom. It was barely standing, roof sagging under the weight of the snow. But it was shelter. Edward kicked the door open and stumbled inside, out of the biting wind. He laid Leora on the dusty floorboards and immediately began the protocol, stripping her wet outer layers, chafing her limbs to restore circulation. He pulled a thermal blanket from his emergency kit, wrapping her tight. "Come on, baby. Wake up." The dog paced anxiously, whining softly, nudging Leora's hand with his wet nose. A cough, a small, ragged gasp of air. Leora's eyelids fluttered. She groaned, curling instinctively toward the heat. Edward slumped back against the wall, tears freezing on his cheeks. He looked at the dog, who had finally settled down, resting his heavy head on Leora's legs. The animal was shivering now, the adrenaline fading, leaving him exhausted and cold. Edward reached out, resting his hand on the dog's thick neck. "I don't know who sent you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "But you're not a stray anymore. You're family." The radio on Edward's belt crackled to life, a burst of static, then a voice. "Edward, do you copy? Search and rescue is 2 mics out from your last known vector." Edward grabbed the radio. "I copy. I have her. We're in the old shack near the ridge. She's alive. We're both alive." He looked down at the dog, who let out a long, contented sigh and closed his eyes. "3 of us," Edward corrected. "There are 3 of us coming home." The Gala of the Sea was a spectacle of excess. Champagne flowed like water. Vivaldi played softly, and diamonds glittered under the chandeliers. Maya stood by the oyster bar, in an emerald green silk gown Sebastian had provided. She looked like royalty, but she felt like a fraud. "He looks like he owns the place," a rasping voice said beside her. It was Helena Costas, draped in dark velvet and sapphires. "He hopes to," Maya replied carefully. "And you?" Helena asked, her dark eyes piercing. "Do you hope to own it too?" "I don't care about owning things, Helena," Maya said honestly. "I just care about survival and protecting the people I love." Helena nodded slowly. "You have a good heart, Maya. I see it. I have decided to sign the papers tonight. Not because of his numbers, but because a man who can earn the loyalty of a woman like you, he must have a soul somewhere." Maya's heart stopped. Guilt crashed over her like a tidal wave. Helena was signing because of her, because of the lie. When Sebastian gutted the company, Helena would blame herself for trusting Maya. "Helena, Maya started, her voice trembling. She couldn't let this happen. "Ladies and gentlemen," the music cut out. Bennett Sharp stood on the stage, tapping a microphone. The room went silent. "If I could have your attention," Bennett announced, his voice smooth as oil. "Before we celebrate this union, I think it is important that we toast to transparency." Across the room, Sebastian stiffened. He met Maya's eyes. He knew. "We have heard a lot about the lovely Maya Brooks," Bennett continued, pulling a manila envelope from his jacket. "Art consultant, world traveler, or should I say, Maya Brooks, resident of apartment 4B in the Bronx, a woman with $42,000 in medical debt, and until 2 days ago, a waitress at the Grand Cosmopolitan Hotel." A collective gasp swept through the room. Bennett held up a grainy security photo of Maya in her uniform, spilling water on Sebastian's suit. "This is your fiancée, Sebastian," Bennett sneered. "A hired actress, a desperate girl you bought to trick a majestic woman out of her legacy." Helena froze. She looked at the photo, then at Sebastian, and finally turned her devastated gaze to Maya. "Is this true?" Helena whispered. The hurt in her voice was worse than anger. Sebastian stepped forward, pale. "Helena, listen. The deal stands on its own merits. The numbers—" "Shut up!" Helena roared. She looked at Maya. "Is it true? Was everything you told me a lie?" The room spun. Maya looked at Sebastian. He was pleading with his eyes. "Deny it. Save the deal. If she lied now, she might still get her money." But looking at Helena's face, Maya knew she couldn't do it. She was done bowing to these people. "Yes," Maya said clearly. The crowd murmured. "I am a waitress," Maya continued, stepping into the center of the room. "I serve tables to pay for my mother's kidney treatments. And yes, Sebastian hired me." She turned to Bennett. "But you're wrong about one thing. I wasn't hired to trick Helena because she is senile. I was hired because Sebastian knew he is broken." She turned to Sebastian. He looked stunned. "He needed someone to show him how to be human," Maya said, tears pricking her eyes. "He needed someone to fake the empathy he lost years ago." She turned back to Helena. "I lied about my job, Helena. And I am sorry. But I didn't lie about you. And I didn't lie when I told Sebastian that destroying your fleet would be a sin." Sebastian flinched. "Maya." "He plans to liquidate the ships, Helena," Maya said, delivering the final blow to save the old woman. "He lied to me too. He's going to fire your workers. He's going to strip the company for cash." The silence in the room was absolute. Helena looked at Sebastian, her face hardening into a mask of fury. "Get out," she hissed. "The deal is dead." "Helena, be reasonable." "Get out!" Helena screamed, throwing her wine glass. It shattered at Sebastian's feet. Sebastian looked at the broken glass, then at Maya. His eyes were wide with shock and betrayal. The billionaire who never lost had been defeated by the truth. He turned and stormed out of the ballroom. Bennett Sharp smirked, victorious. "Security, escort the help off the premises." "Don't touch me," Maya said to the approaching guards. She took off her high heels and held them. "I know the way out." She walked past the whispering socialites and out the front door into the cold night. She had no ride, no money, and she had just blown up a $400 million deal. She began the long walk down the gravel driveway. She had gone a mile when headlights blinded her. A car drifted around the corner, gravel spraying, and skidded to a halt in front of her. It was Sebastian's Aston Martin. He jumped out, tie undone, looking unhinged. "Get in!" he yelled. "Go to hell!" Maya kept walking. "I said get in!" Sebastian grabbed her arm. Maya spun and slapped him hard. The sound echoed in the night. "I am not your employee," she screamed. "I am not your fiancé, and I am not your problem anymore. You lost, Sebastian. You tried to play everyone, and you lost." Sebastian stood there, breathing hard, his cheek red. "I didn't lose everything," he said quietly. "I have the check. I don't want your money." "It's not for the job," Sebastian said, stepping closer. The anger was gone, replaced by something raw. "It's severance, because you were right." "Right about what?" "I was going to dismantle the fleet," he admitted. "I didn't care about the people. But when you stood there in that ballroom, when you defended me even while you were destroying me, I realized something." "What?" "That I don't want to be the man who needs a fake fiancé," Sebastian said, "and I don't want to be the man who fires the woman who saved his life on a boat today." He opened the passenger door. "Get in, Maya. We're going back." "Back where?" "To the house," Sebastian said, a dangerous glint returning to his eyes. "Bennett thinks he won, but he forgot one thing." "What?" "He forgot that I have a temper," Sebastian said. "And now I have nothing left to lose. We're going to crash the party. Again." The Aston Martin roared back up the driveway, gravel spraying like bullets as Sebastian skidded to a halt directly in front of the grand staircase, blocking the path of a departing limousine. "Stay close to me," Sebastian said, killing the engine. "And if security tries to grab you, scream. Rich people hate a scene they can't control." "I think we passed the point of control 20 minutes ago," Maya said, smoothing her green dress. She felt a strange, icy calm. The truth was out. She had nothing left to hide. They marched up the stairs. 2 guards stepped forward to block the heavy oak doors. "Mr. Holt," one grunted. "Mr. Sharp gave specific instructions." "Mr. Sharp is a guest," Sebastian snarled, his voice dropping to the terrifying register that made boardrooms tremble. "I am a shareholder. Unless you want to explain to a judge why you physically barred a majority stakeholder from protecting his investment, step aside." It was a bluff. He wasn't a shareholder yet, but the sheer force of his confidence made them hesitate. That split second was all Sebastian needed. He pushed past them, Maya right on his heels. Inside, the ballroom was buzzing with the scandal. Bennett Sharp was holding court near the orchestra, a glass of champagne in hand, looking like a cat who had swallowed the canary. Helena sat in her high-backed chair, looking old and defeated. When the double doors slammed open, the room went silent. "You have got to be kidding me," Bennett sighed. "Sebastian, this is embarrassing. Even for you." Sebastian walked to the center of the room. He ignored Bennett completely, locking eyes with Helena. "I lied to you about my fiancé," Sebastian announced, his voice booming off the vaulted ceiling. "I lied about my intentions. I came here to strip your company, fire your workers, and use the cash to fund a merger in Tokyo." The crowd gasped at the brazen admission. Helena's eyes narrowed, her hand gripping the armrest. "But," Sebastian continued, stepping closer, "I never lied about Bennett Sharp." Bennett laughed nervously. The "he's worse than me" defense. Pathetic. Security. "Wait." Maya's voice cut through the air. She stepped in front of Sebastian, her chin high. She wasn't acting anymore. "You asked me earlier, Helena, if I was observant." Helena looked at the young waitress. "I did." "I observed something interesting at dinner," Maya said, turning to face Bennett. "Mr. Sharp mentioned necessary restructuring regarding the Savannah Pension Fund. But while I was walking the grounds tonight, I got a notification on my phone, a Google alert for Sharp Logistics." Maya pulled her cracked smartphone from her clutch and held it up like a weapon. "It turns out Mr. Sharp's firm filed a zoning permit application with the East Hampton Township 3 days ago," she declared, "for this address, Windward Estate." Bennett's smile vanished instantly. "Zoning for what?" Helena asked, her voice trembling. "Multi-unit luxury condominiums," Maya read from the screen. "Bennett isn't buying your shipping company to run it, Helena. He's buying it to bankrupt it. He wants the waterfront land. He's going to demolish the docks, scrap the ships, and turn your husband's legacy into a summer resort." The room erupted. In the Hamptons, real estate was a blood sport, and erasing history for condos was a cardinal sin. Bennett's face turned a violent shade of red. That is standard due diligence, just exploring options. It's a demolition order." Sebastian stepped in, seizing the momentum. He pulled a folded object from his pocket. Not a legal brief, but a cocktail napkin he had scribbled on in the car. "Helena," Sebastian said, kneeling beside her chair, a gesture of submission he had never performed in his life. "I was a shark, I admit it. But I'm a shark who builds. Bennett is a vulture who feeds on the dead." He placed the napkin on her lap. "This is a new deal. I will buy Costas Shipping, but I will add a poison pill clause. If I fire more than 5% of the workforce in the next 10 years, I forfeit my shares back to the Costas Family Trust. If I sell a single acre of this land for development, I pay a penalty of $1 billion. Helena looked at the napkin. The ink was smudged, the handwriting frantic, but the numbers were ironclad. "You would handcuff yourself?" she whispered. "Why?" "Because she was right," Sebastian said, looking back at Maya, who stood alone in the center of the room. "Legacy matters. People matter. I forgot that. I need you to help me remember." Bennett rushed forward. "Helena, this is insane. He's writing contracts on napkins. My offer is all cash, fully financed." "Your offer is dirty," Helena snapped, standing up. She looked small, but suddenly she seemed 10 feet tall. "You would turn my husband's dry docks into condos. You would erase our name for tourists." She pointed a shaking finger at the door. "Get out of my house, Bennett, before I release the dogs." Bennett looked around. He saw the disgust on the faces of the elite. He had been caught. He sneered at Sebastian, adjusted his tie, and stormed out, his entourage trailing him like rats fleeing a sinking ship. Helena took a pen from her assistant and signed the napkin. "Get the lawyers to draft the formal version by morning," she told Sebastian. "But this napkin, this I am framing." She looked past him to Maya. "Come here, child." Maya walked forward. Helena took her hand. Her grip was still strong. "You are not an art consultant," Helena said. "No, Mom." "Good." Helena smiled, her eyes crinkling. "Art consultants are boring. You are a fighter, and you are the only person in this room brave enough to tell the truth when it cost you everything." She squeezed Maya's hand. Sebastian is a difficult man. Stubborn, arrogant, and emotionally stunted. Good luck with him. The adrenaline didn't wear off until they were sitting in a 24-hour diner off the Long Island Expressway at 3:15 a.m. The contrast was jarring. An hour ago, they were surrounded by diamonds and deceit. Now, they were in a vinyl booth with a flickering neon sign. Sebastian had loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves. Maya had kicked off her heels under the table. A waitress named Barb, looking tired but kind, poured them coffee. "You guys look like you escaped a wedding or a funeral," Barb cracked. "Something in between," Sebastian said. "I'll have the lumberjack slam and waffles for the lady." When Barb left, a comfortable silence settled between them. It wasn't the hostile silence of the Sapphire Room. It was the heavy, shared silence of two people who had survived a war. Sebastian reached into his jacket, wrote a check, and slid it across the Formica table. Maya looked at it. $50,000. "That's too much," she said. "The deal was 20. "Consider it a consulting fee," Sebastian said, stirring sugar into his black coffee. "You saved me $400 million tonight, and you stopped me from becoming Bennett." Maya looked at the check. It was freedom. It was her mother's kidney transplant. It was a fresh start. She folded it carefully. "Thank you." "So," Sebastian said, looking nervous for the first time. "What happens now? You go back to waiting tables?" "I can't go back to the hotel," Maya laughed softly. "I quit, remember? In spectacular fashion." "Right." Sebastian fidgeted with a sugar packet. "I have an opening, not a fiancé, a liaison. I need someone at Costas Shipping the workers trust, someone who can tell me when I'm being an idiot, someone who isn't afraid to throw a name tag in my soup." Maya sipped her coffee, hiding a smile. "You want to hire me? I want to partner with you. Real job, real salary, benefits, and maybe dinner, a real one, where I don't pay you to be there." Maya looked at him. She saw the exhaustion in his eyes, but also the hope. She saw the man who had driven back to save the day, not for the money, but for the principle. "I have conditions," she said. Sebastian grinned, a genuine, unguarded expression that changed his entire face. "I expect nothing less." "1," Maya counted on her fingers. "You never snap your fingers at a server again." "Done." 2, you pay for my mother's transplant surgery. Not as a loan, as a signing bonus. Done. And 3, she leaned forward. If we go on a date, we go somewhere with taco trucks. No tablecloths, no crystal, just food. Sebastian laughed. I think I can manage that. Barb returned with the plates. Here you go, hun. Thank you, Barb, Sebastian said, looking her in the eye. Barb looked surprised, then smiled warmly. You're welcome. Sebastian picked up his fork and looked at Maya. So, are we a deal? Maya looked at the check in her purse, then at the man sitting across from her. The man everyone feared. The man everyone said had no heart. She had seen his heart. It was bruised and hidden deep, but it was there. She tapped her fork against his. A toast. We're a deal, Maya said. But if you ever spill water on me, Sebastian, I'm keeping the suit. He grinned. Fair enough. Outside, the first light of dawn broke over the highway. The storm had passed. The sky was clear. And for the first time in her life, Maya Brooks wasn't worried about tomorrow. What a journey. From a spilled glass of water in the Sapphire Room to a billion-dollar showdown, Maya and Sebastian proved that integrity is the only currency that matters. We saw a billionaire learn humility and a waitress discover her power. But the corporate world is dangerous, and Bennett Sharp is still out there. Do you think he will return for revenge? And are you ready to see Maya and Sebastian navigate their first real date? If you enjoyed this story of karma, romance, and sweet revenge, please smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next episode. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that even the underdog can win big. Thanks for watching.